Volodymyr Zelenskyy is in Washington to present his so-called victory plan to end the war with Russia. During a meeting with US President Joe Biden at the White House, the Ukrainian president thanked him and all Americans for their support. He'll also hold talks with Vice President Kamala Harris. Ahead of his meetings at the White House, the US announced a new military aid package worth $8 billion to help Kyiv. Well, before the meeting, President Zelenskyy and US Vice President Kamala Harris addressed the press.
As I have made clear on our 6 previous meetings and throughout Putin's brutal aggression and war against Ukraine, my support for the people of Ukraine is unwavering. I've been proud to stand with Ukraine. I will continue to stand with Ukraine, and I will work to ensure Ukraine prevails in this war. To be safe, secure, and prosperous, the United States must continue to fulfill our long-standing role of global leadership. We must stand with our allies and our partners. We must defend our democratic values and stand up to aggressors. And we must stand for international order, rules, and norms.
We have to end this war. We need a just peace, and we must protect our people, Ukrainian families, Ukrainian children, and everyone from Putin's civil. And we are grateful to America for supporting Ukraine all along. And we'll have an important meeting today, right after I'd talked to President Biden about the plan of victory, and I will share some details of the plan with Vice President Harris. It's crucial for us to be fully understandable and to work in a full coordination with the United States. And this morning I talked also to the congressmen, both chambers, both parties, and I'm thankful for the bipartisan support. We believe this war can be won and just peace can be closer only with the United States.
Straight to Washington then, and we can join our chief international editor, Richard Walker. Welcome, Richard. What did we learn from this press conference?
Yeah, well, Phil, we didn't learn a huge amount about the big question that everybody's asking themselves, and I think the Ukrainians very much want to find out the answer to, and that is whether the Biden administration will come out clearly and support elements of what the Ukrainians have been talking about as a victory plan in recent weeks. As we've been hearing from Zelenskyy, he's been talking to Joe Biden about that, and we'll be talking to Vice President Harris about that as well. And within this victory plan, is a renewed big ask from the Ukrainians to the Americans to allow them to use long-range weapons to fire at targets well inside Russia. This is something that the Biden White House has so far been very wary of agreeing to, and this is almost like a last-ditch attempt by Zelenskyy before the end of Joe Biden's term, before this presidential election, which is really consuming, of course, American politics here, to try and make that case for that to happen. We did not learn the answer to that. We don't know if we're going to hear anything about that in the coming days. The Biden administration has agreed to a new package of providing weapons to the Ukrainians, but we haven't heard yet any concrete word of whether they're going to agree to this request from the Ukrainian side.
OK, so no word on those permissions. But as you hinted at there at the end of your answer, President Zelenskyy won't be going home empty-handed.
Yeah, that's right. So the Biden administration have agreed to have announced a new package which includes more air defense and other of these Patriot air defense systems, also some medium-range missiles that can be fired from F-16 fighter jets. So quite important things in that package, but certainly not the kind of big step change that the Ukrainians are looking for.
This started off as being something of a bilateral meeting. The initial hope was that President Zelenskyy would meet the president, the vice president, and indeed the presidential candidate Donald Trump. We understand now that the Trump meeting is not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you never know whether something might come up, but the current situation is that we're hearing from inside the Trump campaign that is not likely to happen. And I think this is where Zelenskyy is on potentially thinner ice in this situation. Obviously, he's here he came down to Washington from New York, where he was attending the UN General Assembly. But of course, it's election season here. It's 6 weeks or so away from the presidential election right now. And Zelenskyy is beginning to see Donald Trump becoming more and more critical of him and the Ukrainians in general on the campaign trail. Donald Trump arguing that he would very quickly put an end to this war through negotiation, and the general understanding of that is that he would then lean on the Ukrainians to make massive concessions to the Russians, so that this would essentially be some form of surrender. And Volodymyr Zelenskyy has been heavily criticized by the Republicans for going on a visit to a munitions factory in Pennsylvania, which is one of the most closely fought swing states in this presidential election, accompanied by 2 elected Democrats there. So Zelenskyy finds himself very much in the heat of an election, of a presidential campaign here. And that made it doubly interesting to see the dynamic here in the White House, where Zelenskyy came, of course, to meet Joe Biden, his counterpart, the US president. But the press conference that he held was not with Joe Biden. It was with Kamala Harris, who is, of course, hoping to be the next president there. And I think this runs, obviously, a political risk for Zelenskyy, that it starts to look like he is implicitly kind of almost endorsing Kamala Harris by taking part in a press conference alongside her. And it was also interesting to look at Kamala Harris's, what she chose to say in this press conference today. She used this opportunity to kind of make the case on first principles for why she believes the Americans should support the Ukrainians so strongly in this war. So implicitly, that is a message to American voters. And she also drew a stark contrast to people who, she said, there are some in my country who would force Ukraine to give up territory and accept neutrality. These proposals are the same as those of Putin. And that is a not particularly veiled jab at Donald Trump for what we've just been talking about, him saying that he would be able to come up with some sort of rapid deal to end this war. So here we see the Ukraine war potentially getting heavily politicized. Again, this has happened in the course of this year in terms of finding funding for the Ukrainians. A funding package got really kind of bogged down in Congress for many months. Now, in the heat of a US presidential election campaign, it looks like Ukraine is being politicized again. And that is not good news for the Ukrainians as they try to keep up bipartisan support for their cause.
Thanks for that, Richard. DW's Chief International Editor, Richard Walker. Well, Dr. Mara Karlin has had a long career as a foreign policy and defence advisor. Most recently, she served as Assistant Secretary of Defence for Strategy, Plans and Capabilities in the Biden administration. She's now a professor at Johns Hopkins University's School of Advanced International Studies. I asked her whether $8 billion in military assistance is all Zelenskyy will be going home with.
Well, that's a whole lot of assistance. And in particular, the specifics are worth spending a moment on. So, for example, pledges to train additional Ukrainian F-16 pilots, more long-range munitions, more air defense, another system, a Patriot air defense system, which has been incredibly important for protecting Ukraine's skies, and also interceptors so that system can work. That's a lot to go home with.
It is a lot to go home with, but he has a country to try and rescue. And we all know that what he wants most of all is permission to use these Western-supplied, American-supplied long-range weapons deeper into Russia. That's the thing that he really prizes, we understand, from this meeting. Is he likely to go home disappointed?
If that is the only thing he's focused on, I don't know that this meeting will meet all of his needs. But look, there has been a lot of support, as you know, over the last 2.5 years from the United States and 50 plus countries to support Ukraine's military. It's a key reason why Ukraine's military is still so successful on the ground and why Ukraine maintains sovereignty over the overwhelming majority of its territory.
Could you take us inside the room? What happens when two heads of state meet like this, when one of them wants something and the other knows exactly what they want? Do minds actually get changed at these meetings?
I think minds can absolutely be changed in these sorts of conversations. It's important to remember this doesn't all start with one conversation, though, right? I mean, these discussions on the security situation in Ukraine, the security situation in Russia, what's been effective, what's been less effective, that's been going on for, 2.5 years. So the story doesn't just begin with today's visit. It's a much, much longer one. And it'll be important to try to think through what impact could it have to use these weapons deeper into Russian territory, and what impact could that have, not just operationally, but strategically? How does President Putin understand that?
And so who or what do you think could change President Biden's mind on this issue of Ukraine's use of these long-range weapons? Because it has changed before, hasn't it?
It has. You're exactly right. So there was a lot of debate, you might recall, earlier in the war over whether or not to give Ukraine fighter jets. And ultimately, that has come through with F-16s and training F-16 pilots. There was a debate also with tanks. And in fact, that was especially relevant for Germany, because once the United States pledged to give some tanks to Ukraine, so too did Germany, which made some particularly capable tanks that were especially relevant for that battlefield. And this one's a little bit different, though. We have heard the Russians talk a lot about strikes deep into their territory. You might know that actually Russia is in the throes of updating its nuclear doctrine. And so I think what folks will want to hear is, operationally, what effect would it have on the battlefield to use these weapons deep in Russian territory? Strategically, what effect does it have on Russia's thinking?
On that, as you say, Vladimir Putin has tweaked his country's nuclear doctrine. He said that assistance by a nuclear power would now be regarded as a joint aggression, which could be met with a nuclear response. There has been a lot of talk. There has been a lot of talk of saber rattling. How seriously do you think that the US is likely to view this newest threat?
Well, look, in general, when we are talking about nuclear weapons and threats, we should be a little bit apprehensive, right? Most powerful weapon on Earth. And we have seen over the last 2.5 years of this war, these moments of saber rattling, where President Putin has made threats, where forces have been moved, where nuclear weapons capabilities have been put into Belarus, for instance. So I really don't think we should pish-posh and ignore it. The challenge is figuring out what's rhetoric and what is reality. Does this updated doctrine really threaten real support that various countries have been giving to Ukraine to help it survive and thrive in this, amidst this conflict? Or is it more specific? Is it bespoke types of assistance that Russia will now view in a certain light? And that's what I think folks are going to have to try to really understand. What does it look like for a nuclear state to support a non-nuclear state and really make it seem aggressive and seriously threatening to Russia?
Quick word then about the way that this is playing out in the election. We've already seen that Republicans have criticised President Zelenskyy for visiting this weapons manufacturer, saying it's all turned political. Is Ukraine an election issue?
It has become an election issue, although interestingly, polling shows the American public is pretty supportive of continuing assistance to Ukraine. So I wouldn't say that the constituents necessarily, on the whole, believe that that should stop. It's the exact opposite, in fact. Indeed, about 60% of the U.S. aid to Ukraine's military actually gets spent here. So like in my home state of Wisconsin, $500 million has gotten spent and is in the throes of being spent to support Ukraine's military. But you are exactly right. This has become a topic of conversation through the election. President Zelensky's visit to an ammunition production factory to thank the factory workers did play a part in that further. Moreover, the much bigger dynamic is that we've seen President Trump talk about ideas that he and vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance have on how to end the war. Unfortunately, their proposal does seem a whole lot like President Putin's proposal.
Right. So this started, at the start of this war, there was bipartisan support for Ukraine. Is it falling away? Is it becoming less bipartisan because the United States or the US political elite is just tired of this? Or is it more because Donald Trump has set out a particular stall on this and Republicans are now very much sort of falling behind that?
You know, just a few months ago, we saw a massive aid package pass Congress, right, with a lot of Republican support as well, to be able to continue assistance to Ukraine. And that really stands out in my mind as a sign that much of Congress, again, including folks from the Democratic side and the Republican side, want to continue this aid. Polling, as I noted, shows the American public wants to continue this aid. But we have seen President Trump raise these ideas about ending the war in 24 hours. I don't think anyone's quite clear on what that would look like or how, anywhere short of really giving President Putin what he wants. And to be clear, as you know very well, this war could end pretty quickly if President Putin just decided that he wanted to stop trying to eat up Ukraine.
Thanks for guiding us through that so clearly. Dr. Mara Karlin from Johns Hopkins University. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.